Hey y'all, it's your girl Mariah Sincere, and I'm back with another video. Before I get started, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and remember to share my video if you like what I have to say. Guys, today I'm going to be talking about a very sensitive topic. I wouldn't be surprised if I lose some subscribers. I know for a fact a lot of the men are probably going to be triggered. I'll say this too, a lot of women are probably going to be triggered because this is hard pills to swallow. As I've come to this realization, and the realization that what I'm about to say is very much rooted in truth, I had gone through a depression because, again, it's a hard pill to swallow. I also want to make a disclaimer here. I'm not going to be making any type of value statements. I don't hate men. I'm not saying whether or not men are good or bad people. And I have to say this because I'm very matter of fact in the way that I talk, and I make observations about behavior. And I notice that a lot of the times when you talk to people about their behaviors, if they hear what they've been doing and they judge that as bad behavior, they automatically take offense and feel like you're calling them a bad person. And that's a conclusion. If you come to that conclusion while you're watching this video, you said it. I'm not saying this. I'm just making observations and commentary on behaviors and patterns that I've seen. I'm also going to say this. The question of whether or not men are capable of love is not a question that I came up with myself, right? I had made observations over the years about men that when I first heard this question, a lot of the stuff that I've observed made sense. But the first person to actually ask this question in this space would be Princella. She calls herself Princella the Queen Maker. She has a YouTube channel called the High Powered Podcast. And I suggest that after watching this video, y'all go to her channel and see what she has to say. As a matter of fact, I'll link her video here. She's also very thorough and scholarly as to how she proceeds to answer this question and break it down. So she's not one of those YouTubers who are getting on here regurgitating these statistics that everybody is regurgitating and just Googling stuff. She's done her due scientific process in examining this very complex question. She's also interacted with some prominent biologists on this matter. So again, it's not just her talking to people about their opinions on YouTube. She has done the scholarly work behind this. A lot of her stuff is research and scientific based, and she has products. She has 2 books called The 5 Components of Love and 41 Shades of Men. And honestly and truly, I'm just thoroughly impressed by the work that she has done. I mean, it's been years and years of work compiled. And as somebody who, you know, I went to school myself, I took biology, I took psychology classes, and a lot of the stuff that she says is very spot on. So yeah, check this out. And as I go through this video, I'm going to be referring back to some of the things she said and how that relates to some of my experiences, right? So I'm gonna first tell y'all what prompted me to actually make this particular video. I had an ex reach out to me very recently, today, and he told me that he loved me and he misses me. If you know me, you know that I had a soft spot for this ex, right? And by all accounts, I probably shouldn't. He'd be what you would call, like, if you be in these YouTube streets, he is what some might consider a classic textbook narcissist. However, because I know him, I also know that like he's the saddest person I've ever met. And when I say sad, I don't mean it as an insult. I mean like he genuinely has sorrow. There'd be times where we'd be having like a great time and he would just zone out. Like I've never seen somebody zone out the way that he does, and you could just tell there's just a lot of brokenheartedness. Some things he talked to me about, but I could tell he held back a lot of things. And it's very hard for me to get on here and talk about him in a negative way. Again, because I have such a soft spot for this ex. People like that make you want to save them. I'm going to say that. And it wasn't anything personal. It was like the way he treated me was the way he treated everybody that was close to him. I'm going to say that. Whether it would be romantic or family members who had a soft spot for him. He couldn't accept love, and there was nothing that you could do to convince him that you were on his side. And if he picked up on the fact that you were trying to convince him that you were on his side, he would see how he could leverage that to get something out of you, right? And unfortunately for him, but fortunately for me, I had met him at a time in my life where I had already been through some things, so I could recognize when he was doing that, and I understood my limitations and my capabilities, and I knew when to say no, okay? And when you say no to people who operate like that, they want to punish you because they believe their punishment is going to gain them a yes. But see, when I say no, my no is not going to turn into a yes, especially if I have valid reasons for saying no. And he just wasn't used to that, and he just behaved in such a manner that, you know, eventually the relationship had to end. But again, we had some really, really great times together, right? So I don't want to talk bad about him. However, since then, I have been through a lot more in terms of the way I relate with the world, the things that I've seen, some things that I've experienced, and also the way that I interact with men in general. I'm going to say this about me. There are no group of people that I love talking to more than males. I find men to be very, very intriguing. I love listening to men. I could talk to men all day long. I think women don't do that enough. I think the problem with women is when y'all listen to men to manipulate them. Y'all listen to men to shame them. And y'all listen to men to try to get them to conform to your ideas and your views. That is not the way in which I interact with men. When I have conversations with men, I ask a lot of questions. I do a lot of listening. I let them talk, and I don't make any value statements about the things that they tell me that they do or have done or the things that they're into. I understand that when I'm talking to them, whether or not I agree with the things that they do is irrelevant, because they're still going to do those things because they are driven by testosterone, and they are carnal beings, and they love being carnal beings. They love operating at that animalistic nature, and the vast majority of them have no desire to transcend operating at that nature. They don't see a need to. And they're going to continue to operate as they've been operating, right? So my purpose in talking to them is not for them to understand women better. They understand us very well, okay? From a young age, they learn how to, they learn us. They know how to move with us. They learn how to operate with us. They have our number, okay? So there's no need for me to talk to a man and explain to them anything about women. They understand very well. We, on the other hand, don't understand men at all the vast majority of the time. From my experience of talking to women, and you can't come to an understanding because you're so defensive. So anyway, since that breakup, I've seen a lot. I've experienced some things. I've been to a couple places, and I've just been like a sponge, soaking up information about men and coming to some of my own conclusions, hearing other perspectives, such as what Princella had to say, talking to my male friends. And so when my ex came to me and he told me he loved me and he missed me, I should have felt something, even if it was like gratification. But I felt absolutely nothing. He might as well have told me that the sky was blue, right? Because I understood that he is incapable of love, right? It's not just him. It's the vast majority of men. Let me be clear, because a lot of people, even women, want to argue with me when I say stuff like that. It's not that I believe all men are incapable of love, but I do believe that only a small percentage of men actually do the necessary work on themselves to be capable of love, right? Because love is not a feeling. And I'm going to refer back to Princella. I love how she breaks this down. So when you ask men, what is love? The vast majority of them, they're like, well, we don't know. Everybody has a different definition of love. And they associate love with care and concern for a woman, right? So they feel like just because they're concerned with a woman's well-being that, lives with them, maybe, their girlfriend, their wife, or, any woman that they're dealing with, they feel like just because they would come to their aid, that they would love them. They feel like just because they would be hurt if that woman left or cheated on them or something like that, that they love them, right? They don't understand that when they're operating with women at that emotional level, a lot of the times it's to get some type of physiological need met. Naturally, you're going to care about the woman who is helping you and fulfilling needs that you need met while you're in survival mode. Okay? And we're going to talk about this because I liked how Princella broke this down using Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you've never taken a basic psychology class in college, or even in high school, I believe that they teach this. There is what's called a hierarchy for a person to reach self-actualization. It's like a pyramid, kind of like the food pyramid. At the very top, you have self-actualization, right? This is the person who you're supposed to become, okay? You at your fullest potential. The higher up you go, the more discipline is required of you, right? Then you have the bottom, the base of the hierarchy, okay? This is where your physiological needs need to be met. For example, food, shelter, clothes, okay? A lot of times for men, it's going to be of a sexual nature, right? And it's harder for men to get to the top of that pyramid of self-actualization because men are driven by testosterone far more than women, okay? That is why a lot of the times men cannot be alone. Have y'all noticed that? You'll have women who can go long periods of time without dealing with a man or having any type of sexual relations with a man. That's not uncommon at all, right? And I'm not saying I haven't met women who, like, I met women who jump from man to man to man. They always got a man. But then I'm far more likely to meet women who who can take breaks from men and genuinely be alone, then I meet men who can do that. As a matter of fact, the only men that I've actually met in real life who I believe to be doing that are the monks at my Buddhist temple, because they take vows of chastity. So you have these basic physiological needs that need to be met. At this level, anybody who's operating in this space where it's hard for them to get their physiological needs met are incapable of love, right? That's going to be both male and female. That's why if you go to a lot of these underdeveloped countries, you will see people putting aside their need for actual love and being with a person that they feel like just does it for them. They don't care about that. That is that's a luxury to these kind of people, right? That's why oftentimes you'll see the woman in these countries dealing with men that she wouldn't deal with if she was financially independent, right? That's why, you know, you could see a lot of these people and feel empathy and compassion for them, but also you understand, I see you as a person, but I know that I can't leave my wallet around you. Okay. I know I can't, I'm not going to leave my drink and go walk off, right? Because they're so focused on survival, right? That your personhood becomes secondary. Okay. They're not thinking about, if I steal this person's wallet, then they might not be able to pay their rent or their bills. They're thinking about, no, I need to be able to pay my rent or my bills. How does this relate to men, guys? A lot of the times, men are trying to get their basic physiological needs for sex met. That is why a lot of the times men will meet you and they know they have absolutely no intention of being in a real relationship with you, but they will pretend that they do long enough to get what they need out of you. Okay? Knowing that you actually wanted a relationship. They'll even lie to you and say they want that too, right? Because they're operating at that base level. Their mind is so focused on getting a need met. That's why you'll meet men, you're dating, you're at a singles event, you think it's all single people, and you got men coming to the singles event preying on single women, and they're not even single, they're married. They're in a relationship, right? And you would expect as a woman for them to see your personhood and think about your feelings, but they can't. They're incapable of thinking about how you might feel because they're so focused on getting what they want. Again, incapable of love. This is why you'll have situations where men can compartmentalize. For a lot of women, it's very hard for us to compartmentalize. I rarely meet women who say you have certain men that's for this, certain men that is for that, certain men that is for this, unless they're operating at that base level, right? But men do this easily, right? They might meet a woman and they know this is just going to be a friends with benefits situation. A man could meet a woman like her and then decide, I don't really like her like that, and still deal with her for years, so long as he can get his physiological needs met. And he won't think to operate in love and tell that woman, you know what? I'm not really feeling you like that. This is never going to be what you want it to be. This is not how I think of you, but this is what I want from you. And as long as you can continue to give me that, then we can continue to deal with each other. A man is not going to operate in love and tell you that, right? He's just going to decide in his head, he's going to know that that's going to be really stupid for him to tell you that, because now you have the option to walk away, and if you have any sense, you would, right? They're in scarcity mode, right? A lot of the times, women, we don't have to worry about whether or not we're going to be able to sexually relate with another human being, because you can walk outside your door and get that. Men have to actually lie. They either have to lie to get it from women, or they actually have to be a man who is about something to get it from women, right? But they can't just walk out their door and women are throwing that at them, and that is what they want the most. And this is why it's so much harder for men to love women, because they're so driven by their sexual and carnal desires that it's hard for them to even see you as a person. And the problem also that exists is they're not willing to do the work on themselves that it takes to actually be able to be capable of moving in love, right? Because again, love requires discipline, okay? It requires you considering other individuals, right? So a lot of the times when I've talked to men and they're like, oh, we're carnal in nature, we're carnal beings, that conversation is never followed up with them talking about how they can transcend that nature. They're perfectly fine with being where they're at. This is why a lot of times when I've interacted with male YouTubers behind the scenes and I ask them about why they don't really make videos directed at men, men know that the vast majority of men are not interested in self-improvement. Genuine self-improvement, right? They'll go listen to the Fresh and Fit who tell them y'all need to work out so that you can get a whole bunch of women, right? They'll listen to it. A lot of them still ain't finna hit that gym, but they'll listen to it, right? And be like, yes, you know, that's the driving force. I'm gonna work out and I'm gonna go get money so I can have a whole bunch of women. But even then, they still ain't trying to self-improve. You know, the vast majority of men want to find women who they can operate at a lower level with, right? So men who are comfortable in being in their carnal nature, it seems that their ideal situation would be to find a woman who is going to stay with them no matter what they do, right? He doesn't even have to love that woman, okay? And Chazz Ellis, he has a video about this. I'm gonna see if I can find this and link it, where he says that men and women love differently. And I like how Princella explained this in a video I watched of hers, where she was saying people say men and women love differently because they don't understand that men don't love at all, right? And when she said that, I thought back to Chazz's video when he said men fall in love with women based off of usefulness, right? Whether or not he was in a bad place in life, like everything he was saying had to do with what a woman could do for a man, okay? How you could be useful to him, and it was transactional. It had nothing to do with the man actually liking the woman as an individual and feeling like he just can't do this life without her. Or him setting aside his own carnal desires to be a better man for this woman, right? It had nothing to do with that. So most men, their ideal would be to get them an anchor woman, okay? What is an anchor woman? This is a woman who, she may not be everything that man wants. She may not be like, if that man would have started off with the looks, okay, maybe the height, the money, if he would have just came into the world or to his being just like that and didn't have to work towards those things, like he actually just had it and could get the woman that he wanted early on, that anchor woman might not necessarily be that to him, right? However, that's okay, because the anchor woman is going to stay no matter what. Okay. And people might think, oh, he loves this anchor woman. And it's like, no, she's just fulfilling a need. A lot of times, guys, I have to understand, without the anchor woman, that man wouldn't really be much, right? The anchor woman might pay a portion or half of the bills or have helped this man get to where he was at. But so this man can look good to all the other women that he goes and deals with because he actually wants to deal with them. Or they might provide something that he wants that the anchor woman doesn't have, right? But that man understands that without this anchor woman, I'm not even going to be looking too good to all these other women. So ideally, a man will keep him an anchor woman around and still be dating, okay? A lot of the times, you know, they'll date until they either find what they're actually looking for. But even then, if they can maintain that anchor woman and still date what they're actually looking for and not have to disrupt their life, they're going to do that. What usually happens in this situation is when that man starts getting sick, or when his parts aren't functioning the way that they used to, then that's when you will see that man try to be more faithful to that anchor woman, because he understands this is who's going to be taking care of him. And this is a thing, guys. This is a thing. That's why y'all will hear a lot of men saying, like, I didn't mature, or I didn't settle down until I was like in my 40s, but they've had a woman their whole entire life. They settle down when their testosterone lowered to where they're not operating in such a carnal nature, and when they seen that it was not going to be in their best interest to continue dogging that woman out, because you may have had the power when you were younger, but as y'all age, she has the power. And a lot of them don't want to be looking like Charles when Ellen threw him out that wheelchair into the bathtub. Okay, so that leads me into my next part, ladies. Y'all have to decide, knowing this, right? If y'all can accept and swallow that hard pill about how the vast majority of men are not capable of love, then what are you going to do about it? Now, some of y'all are going to argue, right? Because I've seen women argue about this, and I've had men argue and say, like, men are capable of love. They love their children. Yes, because they don't want to. Your children can't really do anything for you, right? Because they're broke. And you're not looking, men are not looking at their children in a sexual nature. Okay, I'll say this. Most men aren't, right? So they can't even meet your physiological needs. Do you understand? As the adult, you're supposed to be able to meet their physiological needs. So there's nothing to be gained from these children. So men can see them as people. Okay, men can consider their best interests. It's a lot different when we're talking about how men